You're listening to Murder Not Murdering with Erin,
and Autumn,
a true crime podcast about murder and murdering.
but we are not murderers.
Welcome back to Murder Not Murdering with Erin and
Autumn.
Hey everybody, how's it going?
I'm so excited for this week. I just feel so good to be back podcasting, even though we only took a short break. It's just so fun. And I love connecting and telling stories and doing the research and diving into everything. So I'm pretty excited to hear your case this week.
Well, I've got some news. We have changed our hosting and we have all new analytics. And I just want to say hello to all of our Irish listeners because we are doing the most in Ireland right now. Who would have thought?
Who would have thought? I mean, you're Irish. I have Irish in me. Dustin's Irish.
There you
connect.
go. Yeah. But I just want to say, like, hey, Irish listeners, thank you for listening to our podcast. That's really
Erin,
awesome.
go bra.
Oh, Lord, here we go again on that.
No, you told me. I'm just going with it. So,
yeah. So listen, last week we really started off with a bang. I mean, I feel like both of us went super hard on our cases.
We really did. We really, really did.
Yeah, mine's not quite as intense as that. I mean, I'd like we were talking about, that was the most intense case I have ever done on our podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And I've done a lot of really nasty ones, but that one was, whew. If you haven't listened yet, the Snowtown, Bodies in the Barrels, and Autumn, I got tons of feedback on your case.
You did?
Yeah. Some people told me that, because I haven't watched the documentary, that the documentary didn't really give as much light to the mental health side of things.
Mm-hmm.
Or a documentary that her husband was more involved in.
Yes, he was. He was more involved in that.
Yeah. So it didn't highlight it as much. And so it just didn't give the same attention to that part of it, which I think was the most important part, really.
I would have to agree wholeheartedly.
Plus, fuck that guy.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the guy,
her husband was an awful person.
Awful. And I'm sorry, maybe I'm being insensitive and not giving him enough grace, but in my opinion, I just cannot stomach him.
No, I think he left a loaded gun with his children, and that's what happened.
He was trying to teach her not to be self-reliant on him in her darkest, sickest moments. That wasn't the time. Honestly, and to be honest, it's never the time. Those are also your children. Why would you ever leave them alone with someone
when
who
you've
was
been
so
warned?
Sick? Yes.
He had been warned
multiple
times. For years.
By multiple professionals, not just one. I mean, she had been in mental hospitals with doctors that were saying, do not have more children. Do not leave her alone. She needs care. And he's just like, the more children, the better.
I know. What God will allow.
What God will allow.
It just grosses me out. It made me so mad.
Yeah.
And but I am really glad that you covered it because I think it is an important case, especially about women's mental health and people not listening to them.
Mm-hmm.
I am back to my old-timey crimey ways.
Perfect.
Because as many of you know, I have been encroaching on Autumn's time period. If you're a new listener to us, I will say usually I like to stay somewhere between the 1850s to the 1970s. And that's about where I tap out because Autumn does most cases from the other years and to present. So it makes it nice because we don't really have ever had crossover. And then also Autumn won't know my cases. I don't necessarily always know her cases either. So it keeps it interesting for us.
Right.
But I'm going way, way back to 1850 on this.
Wow,
on
that's
this
a long time ago.
And it does take place in Belgium. So I apologize for my pronunciation. I'm doing my best.
We'll have some grace for you.
Yes. Um, and I looked up all of the things ahead of time and I practiced them. So here's hoping. Are you okay if I jump right in?
Go for it.
Okay. My case is the perfect poison. It was not the scream of a man being attacked. It was the sound of a body realizing, too late, that something inside had gone terribly wrong. On the evening of November 23rd, 1850, no one at the Chateau de Bitremont believed that they were witnessing a murder. It was a dinner between Sister Lydie, her brother Gustave, and her husband Hippolyte. One man staggered and collapsed. Within minutes, Gustave was dead. Those present would later describe the death as disturbing, unnatural, shocking, but not immediately criminal. Because in 1850, death didn't need a weapon. And if a weapon left no mark, was it even murder? And if so, how could it be proven? Forensic science hadn't even begun. To understand what happened, we must start at the beginning. And that starts with Hippolyte Visart de Bocarme. He was a nobleman with not so humble beginnings. This man was a teller of tall tales. He claimed he was born at sea in the middle of a thunderstorm. He said that he had been neglected during his childhood and he was allowed to run wild. In later years, the legend sprang up that he had been suckled by a lioness.
Oh,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
fancy, I guess. What does
Well,
that even
you got to
mean?
get your milk from somewhere, I guess.
Ooh, okay.
Later on, his father became a tobacco dealer, then a hunter. It was not until the family returned to Europe that Hippolyte received any education. He displayed a fascination with agriculture and science. He was also a badly behaved youth and well known to be a swindler and a womanizer. When he was 24, his father died, and he succeeded his title and took over the Chateau de Bitremont, where this whole incident takes place. Hippolyte loved to live lavishly, more lavishly than his fortune would allow. So he did what any man of means did back then. He got a job. Just kidding. He married a woman with lots of money.
Oh,
Yeah. They didn't work. Are you joking?
I mean, now I know.
Lydie Fougnies was the daughter of an apothecary and had one sickly brother, Gustave. After the marriage, Hippolyte found that Lydie was not quite as rich as he originally had hoped. But that didn't stop the couple from enjoying extravagant parties, hunts, and employing a large staff at their estate. Lydie was given 2,000 francs per year by her father, and the couple argued about money, and loud quarrels were often overheard. When Lydie's father passed away, the amount was increased to 5,000 francs per year. But that still wasn't enough for Hippolyte's excessive lifestyle or to support his mistress. They managed to sell some of the land the chateau was on, and that sustained them for a while, until it didn't. So the next step would be to make a plea to Gustave, who had inherited the lion's share of the inheritance when Lydie's father passed away. If Gustave would die unmarried, all his assets would then go to his sister. It was not unlikely, as Gustave had always been sort of sickly and had been very ill since the amputation of his leg. In the spring of 1850, Gustave had actually been doing much better and had recently bought a chateau of his own, and he expressed an interest in a noblewoman to marry. On November 20th, news had traveled that Gustave was coming to the house for dinner to announce his engagement to Hippolyte and Lydie. Strangely, they dismissed all of the staff from entering the dining room, and that Lydie herself would serve everything, and the staff was told to stay in the kitchen. This was very, very unusual. Usually, you would always have someone waiting to serve you or be there in case you needed anything. It was really breaking protocol for the time period. So that afternoon, the maid, Emerence, heard a sound coming from the dining room as if someone had fallen to the floor. And Gustave was crying out, "Oh, pardon, pardon, Hippolyte, Hippolyte." She went to see what the matter was, but as she approached the dining room door, she collided with Lydie, who was rushing out, closing the door behind her. Lydie ran into the kitchen and fetched a vessel of hot water, then ran back to the dining room. Soon after, she was calling out to Emerence and Gilles, the coachman, for help, saying that Gustave had been taken ill and she thought he may have had a stroke. They found Gustave lying on the floor in the dining room. Hippolyte was in a great state of excitement. He ordered vinegar to be brought to him, then proceeded to pour glass after glass down Gustave's throat. Then he ordered Gustave to be undressed and his body washed with vinegar. Lydie rushed to the laundry with Gustave's clothes and threw them in hot soapy water. Gilles, after throwing more and more vinegar over Gustave at Hippolyte's orders, was then told to move the body to Emerence's room and lay it on the bed. Then Lydie stayed up all night scrubbing the floor in the dining room. She also scrubbed Gustave's crutches, but later decided to burn them. It's very strange behavior. Early in the morning, Hippolyte took a knife and began scraping the dining room floorboards. He continued with this task until the late afternoon. Eventually, the couple, both now very exhausted, went to bed. At this point, the servants met together and discussed what to do. All of them were alarmed and terrified from the events that had happened in the last 24 hours. So they decided to go to the local priest and tell their story. By the time they had done so, a rumor had also reached the examining magistrate that Gustave had died an unnatural death. The magistrate and the surgeon were not ones to listen to rumors, but they went to the house to see the body anyway. The man's face had scratches on it, and his mouth had been blackened. They ordered that he would be examined at once. Now, back in the day, they didn't have a morgue per se. If they were going to do an autopsy, they did it right then and there, usually in a barn or anywhere that was kind of a closed off area. The doctors carried the body to the coach house, and 2 hours later, they announced their verdict. The mouth, tongue, throat, and stomach showed distinct corrosive burns, and they believed that Gustave had died from drinking some corrosive liquid, possibly sulfuric acid, which would be a horrific way to go.
Mhm.
They placed Lydie and Hippolyte under arrest. Gustave was not a villain. He was careful, methodical, and he was in control of the family's inheritance. That made him dangerous to Hippolyte. Multiple witnesses later testified that the relations between the men were tense but civil, the kind of politeness that masks resentment. Historian René van der Hagen noted, Bocarme was a man humiliated not by poverty, but by dependence. Hippolyte was not formally trained as a chemist, and this matters. He was what the 19th century produced in abundance: educated amateurs, men with access to books, tools, and confidence, and no guardrails. He conducted experiments at home. According to later summaries, Hippolyte allegedly told an acquaintance, "There are poisons which the law cannot see." So clearly, he's been seeking this out.
Mhm.
In the beginning, they thought maybe Gustave had died from food poisoning, cholera, or a stroke, sudden internal failure. Multiple witnesses recalled Hippolyte saying confidently that poison could not be proven. Again, guy, why are you out here telling everybody this?
Mhm.
But that shows how confident he was, that he believed nothing could be found. From the Journal des Bruxelles in 1850, translated, they said, the accused spoke freely of toxic substances, remarking with assurance that science possessed no means to detect certain agents. This was not denial, it was a lecture, and the authorities noticed. There was only one man that they wanted to examine the remains, a professor of chemistry named Jean Servais Stas. Jean was 37 and he was the leading chemist in the country. He was young, precise, and deeply offended by bad science. He did not accept the idea that there was an invisible poison. According to later accounts, when asked if the poison could be detected, Jean replied, "We shall teach it to reveal itself."
Oh.
Jean worked obsessively. He dissolved tissue, filtered extracts, evaporated solvents again and again and again. He ruled out sulfuric acid, and eventually he isolated what had killed Gustav. It was nicotine, pure enough to identify. This had never been done before. Like most of his contemporaries, he used his sense of taste and smell to identify chemicals. Remember back then, they were really making it up as they went, right? He once remarked on the smell of vinegar. Remember I said his body was doused in vinegar, washed in vinegar, they poured vinegar down his throat. And he was told about all of that. It occurred to him that this might have well been done to mask the presence of the smell of another poison. After a number of experiments, he identified the smell, which reminded him somewhat of conine, the poison that is found in hemlock, and realized that he might be dealing with a vegetable poison. Further purification of the material resulted in a brownish substance with the unmistakable smell of tobacco. He was able to submit this to laboratory tests for pure nicotine and obtained a positive result. Modern forensic historian Alison Matthews explains Stas didn't just solve a murder. He permanently altered the relationship between chemistry and justice. Authorities questioned all the staff at the Château de Bitremont. They found that Hippolyte had bought enormous quantities of tobacco leaves and had made extracts in a laboratory in the castle washroom. Then the extract had been placed in a cupboard in the dining room, and following the day of the murder, Hippolyte had removed all of his equipment, and in the next few days, they were able to trace a number of chemists who Hippolyte had gone to seek advice about how to extract nicotine from tobacco leaves. So he's leaving a trail behind him, right? They start finding buried bodies of cats and ducks, which he had experimented on. Eventually, they also found the equipment hidden behind some paneling in the chateau. The investigators sent the animal remains to Jean Stas, as well as a sample of the wood from the floorboards. Jean found traces of nicotine in all of them. Remember, when all of this happened, Hippolyte was laying on the floor scraping off the wood because the smell of tobacco was so strong. When the trial began, the courtroom became a laboratory. Jurors listened to Stas explain his process step by step. From the Journal des Tribunaux, February 1851, one felt the turning of an age. A science itself seemed to rise and accuse the prisoner. Hippolyte's confidence collapsed. He and Lydie started turning on each other. Lydie admitted that she had helped to murder her brother and said that her husband had compelled her by brute force. And Hippolyte admitted that he had made the poison, but he said he had stored it in a wine bottle, also super weird, and his wife had purposely given it to her brother. It was a feeble lie, and it fooled no one. It was obvious from the appearance of the body that Gustav had died violently, probably being held down while the nicotine was forced down his throat. Lydie was eventually acquitted, and Hippolyte was sentenced to death by guillotine.
Jesus.
Yeah, and this is what he said. "I ask one favor," he told the king's attorney after his appeal against the judgment was rejected. Please see that the axe is well sharpened. I have read of cases in which, owing to the blunt edge of the knife, 2 or 3 strokes were necessary, and the idea of this makes me shudder. He's saying that they had to use the guillotine 3 or 4 times to sever the head. Can you please make sure it's sharp enough? Yikes. Hippolyte was executed by guillotine on July 19th, 1851, before a crowd of thousands of people. As requested, the blade was very sharp, and it only took one single blow to sever the murderer's head from his neck. According to La Gazette des Mondes, he met his fate calmly, with the demeanor of a man who believed himself defeated by circumstance. But he was defeated by something else: progress. After Hippolyte, nicotine was no longer invisible. Alkaloid poisons were now traceable. Chemistry had entered the courtroom permanently. Every poisoner after him inherited his failure. Historian Deborah Blum later wrote, "The Hippolyte Bocarme case closed the door on the fantasy of the undetectable poison. He didn't just commit murder, he changed murder. He forced science forward. He proved that arrogance kills not just victims, but killers too. And the perfect poison? It never existed." My sources were Murderpedia, 19th century Belgian newspaper reportings translated to English, Belgian court proceedings, State versus Visart de Bocarme, 1851, The Poisoner's Handbook by Deborah Blum, a Le Soir article translated to English, and the Royal Academy of Overseas Sciences.
Wow, those were a lot of hard words. You did really well,
Thanks.
and that was crazy.
Right? I think one of the biggest things for me that I found fascinating was just I really, I love the early forensics, right?
Mhm.
And he literally was just walking around telling everybody how, you know what? If they can't find poison. Like, they're not going to be able to find anything. They can't find it. And he thought he was so clever by literally tearing up the floorboards, washing the
Right?
body in vinegar. He thought he had this down. Like, he was totally fine. He nailed it. And
Mhm.
then they bring in this chemist who was like, "Oh, no, I'll find a way. We will find a way." And he did. And it changed forensic science forever. And I just think it's fascinating.
That was really fascinating.
Yeah. So anywho, that was my case. I figured I'd go do some old-timey poisoning for everybody. You're welcome.
I enjoyed it,
Yeah.
learning the forensics and stuff, not that someone got poisoned.
Obviously.
Just to be clear here.
Didn't you do a nurse case where they used nicotine to kill a
Yes.
woman?
Yeah.
I was thinking about during during my whole case. I was like, "Wait a minute. I know Autumn did a case where nicotine was used."
Mhm. I did.
Interesting, because I
I
never
sure
thought
did.
about it, right? I never thought
Mhm.
about nicotine being the thing,
And
right?
insulin.
Exactly.
Crazy.
It
People
is.
get creative.
They sure do.
I have done a realtor case in the past, but this realtor case is something that I really know very well and is very important for other realtors to hear. I'm in, as everybody knows, the title and escrow industry, and realtors are adjacent to that. It's our everyday life. And I actually heard about this case through a very large title company, Stewart Title. And they have it on their website for realtor safety and all that. So I thought I would cover it, just spreading the word to anyone just about realtor safety. You can never be too safe. And I'm going to get into it. You probably know this story, or maybe you don't, but I would like to tell the story of Beverly Carter, and I'm naming my case The Showing. There is a particular kind of quiet that exists inside an empty house. Not the comfortable kind of a home that's being lived in, where you can almost hear someone in the other room, even when no one is there, but a hollow quiet, a waiting quiet, where every sound echoes just a little too long and every footstep feels louder than it should. And if you've ever been shown a house by a real estate agent, you know how strange that space can feel because you're standing in someone else's future with a person you just met, talking about where a couch might go or how much light comes in through the windows, even though none of it belongs to you. For Beverly Carter, that strange in between space between stranger and client, between empty house and imagined home, is where her story ended. But it's not where it began. Before Beverly Carter was ever a headline, before she became a cautionary tale or a name whispered in safety trainings for real estate agents, she was a wife who had been married for 35 years, a mother of 3 boys, and a grandmother who stayed involved in her kids' lives even after they were grown, and a woman who had quietly built a reputation for being someone people could rely on. Beverly was the kind of person who answered her phone when clients called late, who remembered details about people's families, who didn't rush you through a showing just to get to the next one. If someone was nervous about buying their first home, Beverly had a way of slowing things down, of making the process feel manageable instead of overwhelming. And in real estate, that kind of presence matters more than almost anything else because people don't just buy houses. They bring their fear, their hopes, their financial stress, their family history, and their dreams right along with them. Beverly knew how to hold all of that without making it feel heavy. She loved what she did. She was good at it. And she had no reason to believe that going to one more showing on a Thursday evening would be any different from the hundreds she had already done. In the days leading up to September 25th, 2014, Beverly had been in contact with 2 people who said they were interested in buying a house. They called themselves Crystal and Stephen Adams, and they were from out of state. They sounded normal, polite, serious about purchasing. Nothing about their communication raised red flags, not in a profession where strangers call you every day asking to see properties, often with very little notice. So Beverly did what she always did. She scheduled a showing. The house was in Scott, Arkansas, a quiet area just outside Little Rock, surrounded by open land and new construction, where homes sat empty waiting for families that hadn't arrived yet. It should have been an easy, routine appointment. She told her husband where she was going and offered to pick up dinner on her way home from the showing. Something pretty normal for them, as she would have late nights based on the schedules of her clients and if she was able to put an offer together, lots of paperwork and time. She got in her car and she drove to the house. Stephen and Crystal Adams were not looking for a home. They were looking for a victim. They had convinced themselves that real estate agents were wealthy, that they had access to large sums of money, and that if they could get one alone in an empty house, they could force them to give it up. There's something so chilling about how methodical that thinking is, how they chose a profession, not a person, and how they reduce someone's entire life to a dollar sign and a theory. They chose the house because it was empty. They chose the time because it was late in the day. And they chose Beverly simply because she was the agent who answered the phone. They did not know her. They did not research her finances. They did not verify anything about her life. They built an entire plan around an assumption. Beverly arrived at the house shortly before the agreed upon time of 6 p.m. and unlocked the door. She was stepping into something that had already been carefully staged for her, even though she had no way of knowing it. When Beverly didn't come home that evening, her husband, Carl Sr., felt that quiet shift that every family knows. The moment when something doesn't feel right, even if you can't explain why. He had been calling and texting her for a few hours with no answer. Around 8:30 p.m., he called his son, Carl Jr., and told him that he was not able to reach Beverly and that he was concerned. At first, Carl Jr. didn't think that 8:30 p.m. was super late, based on the timing of the meeting and the fact that she could get chatty. But the longer they stayed on the phone chatting, Carl Jr. could hear the worry in his voice, and the concern was only growing. He knew that he couldn't put his father at ease without getting involved. He offered to go to Beverly's office and told his father to go to the property that she was showing. And between the two of them, one of them would locate Beverly. Carl Jr. arrived at Beverly's brokerage, and the building was dark and there was no sign of Beverly. His wife reached out to her managing broker and her assistant to see if either of them had heard from Beverly. They hadn't. Carl Sr. calls Carl Jr. and let him know that he's at the house that Beverly was showing to the potential buyers, and something feels very wrong. The door to the house was wide open, and there was no sign of Beverly inside the home. Her car was still there, but Beverly wasn't.
That's weird that there was no signs at all.
No, like it was just abandoned. Carl Jr. tells his father to contact the police, that it was better to err on the side of caution and that he would meet his father at the house. When police arrived, they found her purse inside her car and a little notebook. This tracked for the family, as this was a safety measure she had done often, locking her belongings in the car, such as her wallet and purse, to keep them safe, while she met with potential buyers and sellers, because the truth of the matter was, they were more often than not strangers. There was no sign of struggle that would have screamed for attention, just the eerie stillness of a place where something had gone very wrong. When Carl Sr. had arrived at the house in Scott, he was not thinking like an investigator. He was thinking like a husband and a father who was suddenly terrified that something had gone wrong. The driveway was empty except for Beverly's car. The front door was wide open, and the house itself was silent. Carl Sr. immediately began calling her name, walking from room to room, opening doors, checking closets, checking bathrooms, moving through the house with that growing sense of panic that comes when every unanswered call starts to feel heavier than the last. He went upstairs, he opened more doors, and at one point he climbed into the attic, pulling himself up just to make sure she wasn't injured or trapped somewhere he couldn't see. Because in those first minutes, his mind was still clinging to the ordinary explanations, that she had fallen, that she had fainted, that she needed help, and was waiting for him to find her. So when police arrived and began asking questions, that very instinct to search for his wife quietly placed him under suspicion. Because in cases like this, it is so often the husband.
I mean, how often do we say that? It's always the husband.
Always the husband.
Yeah.
And because walking through the house, touching doors, moving through rooms, he had unknowingly disturbed the scene, altering it in ways that investigators would later have to carefully untangle, until phone records, timelines, and simple reality began to make one thing very clear. Carl Sr. had not followed Beverly there. He had arrived after she was already gone, and the man now being quietly scrutinized by police was not a suspect at all, but a husband who had reached the place where his wife should have been and realized she was missing. As the family sat with detectives that night, answering questions they never imagined they would have to answer, something suddenly shifted in the room in the quietest way possible. A vibration on a phone, then another and another, as messages began to come in from Beverly's number. For a brief, fragile moment, everything changed. Relief washed through them, almost physically, because there it was, proof that she was alive, that she had her phone, that she was able to communicate, and in that instant, they allowed themselves to believe that maybe this was all a misunderstanding, that maybe she had simply gone somewhere unexpectedly and would walk back through the door, embarrassed and apologetic and perfectly fine. They read the messages carefully, clinging to every word, until one text arrived that stopped them cold. A casual line saying she was out having drinks. And in that single sentence, hope gave way to dread, because everyone in that room knew the same thing at once. Beverly did not go out drinking. She did not disappear without telling her family, and she would never, ever choose a night of drinks over coming home to the people waiting for her. She was an early to bed, early to rise type of person, and her favorite drink was not alcohol. It was chocolate milk.
Oh, gosh.
It's like kind of like me. I'm not a drinker. Like if I was missing and I
Oh,
texted I was out drinking, there would be a problem. No one would believe that.
100%.
In that moment, as relief dissolved into something much darker, they understood that whoever was sending those messages was not Beverly, but someone trying to clumsily pretend to be her. After that final message, everyone and everything in the room seemed to change at once, and the investigation, which until then had been cautious and methodical, suddenly accelerated. Detectives now knew with certainty that Beverly's phone was no longer in her possession, and that whoever had taken her was still actively trying to control the story of where she was. And in those first critical hours, every minute began to matter. Detective Allison contacted Beverly's cell phone provider and requested real-time tracking. And soon, updates began coming in every 15 minutes. Each new data point sketching a thin, invisible line across the map. The phone was moving, steadily, deliberately, traveling in a straight path toward the outskirts of Little Rock. And for a brief stretch of time, it almost felt as though they were chasing her in real time, watching her movement unfold through the towers and signals and coordinates. Then something strange happened. The phone stopped moving. It pinged in the same location once, then again, and then a third time, each update returning the exact same spot, as if whoever had it suddenly decided to stay still. Detective Allison drove there immediately, following that electronic trail to what turned out to be nothing more than a commuter parking lot along the interstate, a place where people routinely left their cars before carpooling into the city. Unremarkable, anonymous, easy to blend into. And as he arrived and stepped out of his vehicle, the update came through that changed everything again. Beverly's phone had just been turned off. In that single moment, the most promising lead they had vanished, because now the one thing that had been actively guiding them toward her was gone. And finding Beverly through her cell phone was no longer an option at all. And at this point, she had been missing for 8 hours. With the trail from the phone now abruptly cut off, investigators were forced to pivot back to the one solid thing they still had: the last confirmed human contact Beverly had made before she vanished. They returned to her call logs, her text history, the ordinary digital record of a working woman scheduling appointments, and there, sitting quietly among routine business calls, was the number she had been communicating with about the showing. They found out that the names and the phone numbers were fake, spoofed. However, to create a fake number, you have to have a real one, and the detectives were able to trace it to a woman named Crystal Lowry. At first, she was simply a name attached to a phone number, but as detectives began to pull the thread, the name started appearing again and again in call records and tower pings in the short window of time that now defined Beverly's final hours. The phone that had sent the strange messages had been in contact with Crystal's number. The number had moved through the same corridors of highways and cell towers, and slowly, almost gently at first, suspicion began to settle in one very specific direction. Detectives located Crystal Lowry's home, and upon arriving, a white male is seen jumping into his vehicle and racing out. They
Not
began
suspicious.
No, not at all. So they began to pursue him, and he eventually wrecks his car.
Oh my God.
This man is Aaron Lewis, and he is taken to the hospital for his injuries. And because Aaron is only a suspect and not in custody, the detectives must wait for him in the lobby. Before they could run any tests, and before officers have a chance to question him about Beverly's disappearance, he vanishes from the hospital. Although they don't know how Aaron or his wife Crystal are connected to Beverly or her disappearance, they become the main suspects in her disappearance. They put out a bolo on Aaron Lewis and quickly get a tip that he is at a local sandwich shop. However, once they arrive, he takes off on foot and runs into an apartment complex. And that's when he jumps off a balcony. And detectives place him in custody.
I was like, how high was that balcony?
Not high enough to do anything bad to you, Aaron. Nice try.
Okay. All right.
With Aaron in custody, they search his property, and they find Beverly's cell phone in Crystal and Aaron's bedroom. They arrest Crystal and bring her in for questioning, not yet accusing, not yet confronting, just talking, asking her about a house that she said she wanted to buy, about a showing she claims she never attended, about a real estate agent she said she barely knew. And in those early interviews, nothing she said was wrong, but everything was just slightly off. Timelines shifted by minutes, details softened and then hardened again. Answers arrived too quickly or too vaguely, as if rehearsed but imperfectly remembered. And while Crystal sat in that interview room, insisting she had nothing to do with Beverly Carter's disappearance, detectives were quietly building a parallel vision of the evening outside that room. One where Crystal's phone, Crystal's movements, and Crystal's story were beginning to drift further and further apart until it became clear that she was no longer simply a witness in this case, but the doorway through which the entire truth would eventually have to pass. What Crystal eventually told investigators was horrifying in its simplicity. They had planned to kidnap Beverly for money. They thought she was rich.
Do they think that real estate agents own the houses they're selling? I mean, honestly,
Erin,
it's such a dumb choice. Like,
I
of all
agree.
people, anyway, sorry.
Yeah, so they thought she was rich, but when they realized she wasn't, when they discovered that she didn't have access to the kind of funds they had imagined, their plan collapsed. Honestly, it's what the fuck? Like, I have no words, like, honestly. Like,
No, it's just weird to
and
me that
how
they were sitting and scheming this, and they're like, she's probably got loads of money. It's like, what are you talking about? Do you think she
yes.
keeps all the money, then she sells
On
a
her?
house? Like,
Right, like,
what
it's
do you?
like, in cash, like, in a briefcase? Like, what in the
Yeah,
hell is wrong with you?
I've got $600,000 in this suitcase. Like, what are you
Right.
talking about?
It's
It's
sick.
so dumb.
They're idiots. They're
Yeah.
idiots.
Yeah.
And Beverly paid the price for their delusion. Beverly had arrived at the house shortly before 6 p.m. She parked in the driveway, unlocked the front door. Inside, Aaron Lewis, who had been posing as Stephen Adams, was already waiting for her. Court testimony later revealed that as soon as Beverly had entered, Aaron attacked her from behind. He wrapped duct tape around her face and hands. He restrained her before she could call for help, before she could reach for her phone, before she could run. He placed her in the trunk of his car, and Aaron drove Beverly to a remote area in Cabot, Arkansas, to the land owned by his family. This was after he had taken her to his and Crystal's home, where he had planned to take pictures of her and send them to her husband for ransom. When they realized that she had left her purse in her car for security reasons, and that's how they thought they were going to get access to her bank, Erin drove back to the scene of the crime to grab her purse, but the cops were already there.
Oh my
So
God.
he decided
No.
that's when he was going to drive her to the remote area in Cabot, Arkansas, to land owned by his family. During the drive, Beverly was still alive. According to later statements, she pleaded with them. She told them she did not have money. She told them that they had the wrong person. She begged them to let her go. But by that point, the plan was already unraveling, and they had not thought it through to what would happen after the kidnapping. They had not planned what to do when their assumption turned out to be wrong. And once they realized that Beverly could not give them what they wanted, something shifted. At the remote property, Beverly was killed. Afterward, Aaron Lewis buried her in a shallow grave on his family's land. He left her there and went home. Both Crystal Lowry and Aaron Lewis were convicted and sentenced to life in prison without parole.
Good.
The evidence was overwhelming. Their phones, their movements, their confessions, all weaving together into a story that was as clear as it was devastating. But no sentence could give Beverly's family back what they lost. No courtroom ending could restore the woman who had left that morning expecting to come home. What makes Beverly Carter's story linger is not just how she died, it's how she lived. She was a woman who built a career on trust, on meeting strangers in empty spaces and making them feel safe, on walking through one of the biggest decisions of their life with patience and care. And in the end, it was that very trust, the thing that made her good at her job, that put her in harm's way. Real estate agents all over the country changed how they work because of Beverly. They bring someone with them now. They ask for ID. They check in. Because her story forced people to see a truth that had always been there. That sometimes danger doesn't look like danger at all. Sometimes it looks like a couple who just wants to buy a house. And sometimes it takes the life of a woman like Beverly Carter to make the world finally notice. Beverly's son, Carl Jr., stated at sentencing. His voice quivered as he remembered his mother's smile and laughter that would fill up a room, and how she doted on her 5 grandchildren, teaching them to ride bicycles, tie their shoes, and eat entire boxes of Little Debbie cakes.
Oh.
We had so many good years left with her, he said. This world is a darker place without her. He started the Beverly Carter Foundation, and it's to help agents with safety, and it provides safety courses and video trainings and safety resources on how to protect yourself when you're a realtor. So I feel like that's amazing.
It's great. It's
It's
a nice
awesome
way to honor
for
her.
her.
Yeah.
Mhm. My sources were the Beverly Carter Foundation, the ID channel show Text Me When You Get Home, Arkansas Online, Realtor Murder, Stewart Title, Arkansas Democrat Gazette. And I just wanted to know also that she had lost one of her sons to a car accident in 2003. So that family had already had
Ex-
a
Experienced
tragedy.
such loss. Yeah.
And so then now she's reunited with him.
Oh, Autumn, that was a sad one.
It's just awful that these people were just looking for a money grab. They thought she was rich and they could I mean, they were hoping to get $100,000 out of her and her family. It's just like, by kidnapping this realtor, like what you like, I mean, does
Just
this
so
make any
senseless.
sense?
No, no. And I just think, like, obviously, they were not very good at being criminals. leaving trails behind and all the things. And also, you can tell they didn't plan it that well because then they took her to multiple locations. We're going to
Mhm.
try to get ransom from her. Like, what are you
They
doing?
started texting her family from her phone
Like, I just
at
can't.
their home. They had the phone at their I mean, like, come on, these people were just not the
No, and
most
this,
I mean, thankfully, they weren't. They were caught and everything, but I mean,
sure.
Jesus.
But this poor innocent woman who was just going there to try to sell a couple a home, and
Mhm.
unfortunately, that's was her fate. It's just awful.
Awful, truly
I
awful.
don't think I ever really thought about how vulnerable real estate agents are going out to meet somebody.
Mhm. It's I mean, truthfully, you're just putting faith in to that these people are real.
Yeah, you're isolated. You are, in a place that can be locked. No one's
Mhm.
there to watch. I do think
Right.
in this day and age, it's a little different because I think a lot of people do have cameras and such. So there
Mhm.
is a little bit of safety in surveillance. But, it's still that I never thought about how vulnerable an agent really, really is just going to, especially if it's, say, it's like a location where
Right,
there's
and
no
well,
one
and
around.
it was a vacant home too, so I
Yeah.
mean, they probably wouldn't have had I mean, it was 2014, so security cameras existed, but I'm not sure if they would have had security cameras on a vacant home.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Um, also, it was a man that was murdered in a case that you did before,
Mhm,
where it was another situation where they were kind of, like, isolated and,
mhm. It was here
out at
in Seattle,
yeah,
a and
I
ended
remember
up
that one.
being the cop's DNA found, like, he was a cop, so
Yeah, I remember that one.
mhm.
Yeah, it's so be careful out there, real estate
Yes,
folk.
please be careful. Please, please, please be careful.
Yeah, I know I will always think of this case from here on out.
Mhm, me too. Like,
Yeah,
honestly, like, all my realtor friends that I deal with on a daily basis, it's like, "Ugh, please be careful."
yeah. I didn't know this case. I never heard of it.
Yeah, it's uh, unfortunately, it's pretty well known in my industry, but I guess it's not well known out there in the world, so I'm glad I'm telling it so people can be more careful,
Yeah,
take precautions, think of her,
absolutely.
get home to your families.
Yep. Hug your loved ones dearly. And don't
Mhm.
poison anybody with
Don't
nicotine.
don't poison anybody with anything, not
Mm-mm.
just nicotine.
Yeah, that as well. Uh-huh.
No poisonings.
No poisonings. All right. Well, those were our cases. We're going to be back next week. Do follow us on social media because we will be posting more about these cases with photos so you can put a face to the names that are being told. Mine will be sketches because it was 1850. So,
Oh, Jesus. That is a
yeah,
long time ago.
it is a long time ago. Um, anyways, so our Instagram is at Murder Not Murdering. And we also have a TikTok at mnm.pod, right? Yeah. And if you do have a case that you would like us to cover, you could always slide into our DMs and we will do our very best to research and report on that case. I know recently we had someone actually on TikTok, right?
Mhm.
That
Yeah,
we
I
talked
reached
to
out.
about.
Mhm. She was, asking if anyone would like to cover her mother's case, and I had heard it on, Morbid actually covered it as well, and so I reached out and I told her that we would love to cover her case, and she sent me the case files, so we're researching that, and we wanna handle it with as much care as possible, but that episode will come out soon.
Yeah. So like we said, if you have a case where you would like us to cover it or something that you think needs more attention, please just slide into our DMs. Let us know. We are more than happy to do that. So, new episodes are always out on Monday. We want to thank everybody all across the world who's listening to us right now. And we so appreciate you. Please let your friends know about our podcast because we're just two little ladies trying to do our thing.
Mhm.
And we are going to see you next week. All right. Bye.
Bye.